In the summer of 2023, an American restaurant offered its customers unlimited shrimp. The customers accepted. They accepted so thoroughly that the restaurant lost $11 million in 3 months. The story is famous. It is also almost entirely a distraction. The animal was not killed by shrimp. It was killed by rent. Money in the wild. Number 6, the landlord. Observe the habitat. A low building beside a car park, painted the colour of a boiled crustacean. Inside, the air smells of butter and warm bread. This will matter more than it sounds. In May, the restaurant made a decision. Unlimited shrimp every day for $20. It had done this before. For nearly 20 years, the offer arrived briefly, then went away again. Went away is the important part. The offer worked because it ended. This time it did not end. It simply stayed on the menu permanently. The herd responded as herds do. Visits rose by 4%, which is normally very good news. But the herd had understood the offer rather better than the restaurant had. It came back. It brought friends. It ate on average a great deal more than $20 of shrimp. Some specimens were observed to arrive at opening time and to remain comfortably past lunch. In the kitchen watching the shrimp go out, somebody began doing arithmetic. By the autumn, the restaurant had lost $11 million, and the world had its explanation. It is a satisfying explanation. It is tidy, it is funny, and it is far too small. To find what actually happened, we must go back 56 years to Central Florida. In 1968, a man named Bill Darden opened a seafood restaurant in Lakeland. It was busy. It was so busy that a month later, he opened a second one. In 1970, General Mills bought the whole thing. At that point, there were 5 restaurants. General Mills sold flour and breakfast cereal. It also had a very great deal of money. The animals, suddenly well-fed, began to grow. By 2003, there were 673 of them across North America. For a great many families, this was the first restaurant with tablecloths they had ever entered. It owned its buildings, the land, the car parks, the low red roofs, all of it. A restaurant that owns its building pays no rent. In a bad month, it simply earns less. In the wild, a creature that owns its burrow cannot be evicted from it. That is the entire advantage. Someone was about to notice that the burrow was worth rather more than the creature. By 2014, the parent company had tired of it. Sales were flat and the shareholders were restless. So in May, Darden announced that it was selling Red Lobster for $2.1 billion. The buyer was Golden Gate Capital, a private equity firm in San Francisco. Private equity firms do not cook. They buy things that cook and then rearrange them. $2.1 billion is a serious sum. It is about 9 times what the restaurant earned in a year. One might reasonably ask where a firm finds $2.1 billion. It is a fair question. The restaurant was about to help answer it. The answer sat in Darden's own press release, near the bottom, in a single sentence. It was sent to the entire financial press. It was, as far as one can tell, ignored. The firm found the money in 10 weeks. It found most of it inside the restaurant. Golden Gate now owned Red Lobster and everything Red Lobster owned. That included about 500 buildings and the car parks around them. 10 weeks after buying the company, the firm sold the buildings. Not the restaurants, only the ground they stood on. The buyer was a property company, American Realty Capital Properties. It paid $1.5 billion. That money did not go to Red Lobster, it went to Golden Gate. Golden Gate had agreed to pay $2.1 billion for the restaurant. $1.5 billion of that had just come out of the restaurant's own buildings, which left the firm's own money at risk at nearer $600 million. The restaurant had, in effect, been used to buy itself. Nothing closed. Not one restaurant. Lunch was served as usual. The tables were the same, the staff were the same, the biscuits were the same. Only the floor had changed hands. Red Lobster did not move out. It stayed exactly where it was and began paying rent. This is called a sale-leaseback. You sell your building, then rent it back from the buyer. The money arrives once, the rent arrives every month, forever. The leases ran for 25 years, with the rent rising 2% every single year. 2% is a very small number. 25 years is not a very small amount of time. The rent did not care whether it rained or what the economy did or how lunch went. It went up in the good years. It went up in the bad years. It simply went up. The animal had sold the ground beneath it and agreed to go on standing there. For a few years this was survivable. Rent is survivable when business is good. But casual dining was not having a good decade. The herd had discovered that food could come to the herd. It was eating in cars, at desks, out of paper bags in front of the television. Visits fell, the rent went up. That is the whole mechanism, and it never once stopped. By 2023, the restaurant was paying about $200 million a year in rent. That was roughly $1 in every 10 it took across the counter. 64 million of it went on restaurants that were already losing money. It was paying to keep the lights on in buildings it had once owned outright. $200 million is not a sum a restaurant can serve its way out of. Now return to the shrimp. The shrimp cost it $11 million over a single quarter. The rent cost it $200 million a year and had done so for 9 years running. The shrimp was one bad summer. The rent was every summer and every winter for 25 years. One of them was on the news. The other was in a press release from 2014. By now, the restaurant had changed hands again. In 2016, a seafood company from Thailand bought a quarter of it. It is called Thai Union. It sells fish and a very great deal of shrimp. It paid $575 million for that quarter share. By 2020, it had bought out the private equity firm and held just under half. So it was now the restaurant's largest owner and also its only supplier of shrimp. It sold the restaurant its shrimp and it owned the restaurant. Both hands belonged to one animal. The rent went on, arriving throughout, still rising 2% a year, exactly as agreed. In May 2023, under a chief executive it had appointed, the everyday shrimp offer began. Whose idea that was is now the subject of a lawsuit, which we shall come to. Visits rose, the losses widened, and the forecast for the year was cut, and then cut again. The restaurant was busier than it had been in years, and dying faster than it ever had. In January 2024, the Thai company announced that it was leaving. It wrote off $530 million of the $575 it had put in. In the wild, this would be described as a poor season. The cash inside the restaurant fell from $100 million to under $30 in 6 months. On the 19th of May 2024, Red Lobster filed for bankruptcy protection. It went in with about 550 restaurants. Roughly 100 did not come out. Some closed with no warning at all. Staff arrived in the morning to find the doors locked. Gift cards, bought in good faith the week before, became small rectangles of coloured plastic. The auctioneers came for the fittings. Somebody, somewhere, bought the lobster tanks. The lobsters, one assumes, were quietly delighted. And in the filings, the company began asking who exactly had ordered all that shrimp. One might assume this was a freak event. One unlucky restaurant, one unusually clever contract. It was not. The same manoeuvre had been performed for years on animal after animal. In 2004, a department store called Mervyn's was bought from Target. Its new owners separated the shops from the land beneath them, exactly as we have just seen. The rent went up by about $80 million a year. Mervyn's filed for bankruptcy 4 years later and never opened again. Its creditors sued. The buyers paid $166 million to settle. In 2005, a chain called Shopko was bought for about $1 billion. The following year, its buildings were sold for $815 million and rented back. Shopko lasted until 2019. 14,000 people worked there on the day it closed, and in 2015, Sears sold 235 of its own shops. It sold them to a property company run by the man who was also running Sears. $2.7 billion arrived. Sears then rented its own shops back from itself. It filed for bankruptcy 3 years later, and then it sued him. 4 companies, 11 years, one manoeuvre, performed over and over again. In every case, the buildings were the healthiest organ. In every case, they came out first. The animal walks away from the table. It simply cannot walk very far, which returns us at last to the restaurant that smelled of butter and warm bread. Red Lobster is still alive. In September 2024, an investment firm bought it out of bankruptcy. There is a new chief executive, a new menu, and about 550 restaurants left. Sales are up around 10%. There are queues again, this time for the seafood boils. Nobody has offered anybody unlimited anything. There are also reports that it is still burning cash rather faster than it earns it. And in May 2026, its creditors sued the Thai company and its former chief executive. The lawsuit calls the shrimp offer a car crash, in which restaurants simply ran out of shrimp. The Thai company denies all of it. It says the offer was never its idea. That will be settled by lawyers. The rent was settled in 2014. The buildings, it should be said, are all still standing. They were never the problem. When a place the herd loves disappears, the story told is the last silly thing it did. The real cause is usually older, quieter, and signed years earlier by people who never ate there. Somewhere in a filing cabinet, a lease is still going up 2% a year. Homo Spendens rarely reads the lease. It reads the menu, and it orders the shrimp. One can hardly blame it. The shrimp was, by every account, excellent.